everyone. This is a revised version of the video, What is the Mark of Cain? And it has new audio and some new information in it. And the answer that will be given in the video is that the mark is not something that you can easily see from the outside. It is a physical mark. It is in the blood. And the mark is not designed to protect Cain and his descendants. It's actually designed to protect whoever kills Cain. And this depends on whether they kill him by accident or in self-defense or out of vengeance. There are a lot of theories on what the mark was, like was it a swastika, a cross, a hexagram, was it black skin, was it white skin, was it red skin, a hook nose, and some of those theories have been clearly made for certain purposes, we'll say. And if you look closely, you can see that they just don't hold up. Just about the first thing you see in the story of Cain and Abel is how blood enters into the story. God says that he can tell that blood has been shed. It's calling from the earth. And he could also tell that blood is on Cain's hands. And so we can see that blood is marking. It's creating a record. And so you can see how the mark is going to tie into blood. And I'll just read the passage in the Bible from the book of Genesis. And the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" And he said, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" And he said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries to me from the ground. And now you're cursed from the earth, which has opened her mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall not henceforth yield to you her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall you be in the earth." And Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you've driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from your face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that finds me shall slay me." And the Lord said to him, "Therefore whosoever slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. So there are two important things that we see here. The first thing is God saying that he keeps a record of blood. He can follow after it, he tracks it. He has a way of knowing where it is, either in the earth. He says that he sees it in Cain. And the next thing he's saying is that vengeance is his. He's stating his authority over vengeance. He's saying it doesn't belong to man, it belongs to me. And he's not necessarily telling Cain that he's going to protect him. As a matter of fact, he doesn't say to Cain that he's going to protect him. He sets a mark on Cain, but it doesn't say that he tells Cain that. The first thing he says to Cain after Cain's complaint is that if anyone takes vengeance, there will be a curse on that person. And there are other places in the Bible where it talks about vengeance being God's. To me belongs vengeance and recompense. And so he's telling Cain, and he's telling everybody else, that vengeance belongs to God and not man. So you can see clearly that God is not telling Cain that he's going to protect him. He's just telling Cain that if Cain is killed, there will be vengeance. So there's a possibility that Cain can be killed. And God is setting up his authority here. He's saying, I have the authority. Vengeance is mine. I don't give it to man, at least not yet. So God's not guaranteeing Cain protection. He's just showing Cain his authority, that he still has the authority. And he's really not even consoling Cain, because God knows that Cain's just an irrational, fearful person. He's unrepentant, and he doesn't know really what he's afraid of. He's afraid of death. You'd think that since he can't stand his punishment, that he would want death, but he's not even thinking that way. So God is saying that he will take vengeance, and there will be a curse. And it doesn't even say that God tells Cain that he's going to put a mark on him. It just says that God puts a mark on Cain. The only thing that Cain seems to know is that there's vengeance if he's killed, that there's a curse, and whoever kills Cain, there will be vengeance on that person. And if you look closely at the words in the passage, the King James Version has the words slay and kill. And these words are also different in the Hebrew. The Hebrew for slay in the passage is harag, and that means to smite with the intent to kill, to destroy, to murder. And the word for kill in Hebrew is nakeh, and that means to smite either lightly or strongly, and it doesn't necessarily mean with the intent to kill. So they have different meanings, and that is kind of a hint at what the mark does. It's like if someone accidentally strikes Cain, or if someone is just trying to protect themselves from Cain and they hit Cain, and if Cain were to die, the curse doesn't apply there. The curse only applies if you're taking vengeance, if you're going after Cain to smite him with the intent to kill him. That's the difference. And so you could say that the mark is actually protecting someone who might kill Cain out of self-defense or by accident. Okay, now if you look at the curse, it doesn't say just what the curse is. It just says there will be vengeance. And it doesn't say God will kill whoever kills Cain. It just says there will be vengeance sevenfold. Now what is the sevenfold? I would say the sevenfold is time. It's 7 times 7, or 7 weeks of years, and that would be 49 years. And that is what the Jubilee is based on. The Jubilee was the end of a period of bondage. It was 49 years of slavery. And the Jubilee celebrated the end of the slavery. Now there are several questions that have been asked about this story in the book of Genesis. Did Adam and Eve know about the curse on Cain? And would they tell their children about the curse? Were there other people that knew about the curse? And who was Cain afraid of? Were there other people outside of Eden? I would say that there were other people, and these would be the other Adamites that had been created on the 6th day of creation. The Bible doesn't really answer these questions, but it does say that there were a few others that knew about the curse, and that would be Lamech. He had told his wives about it, and he refers to the curse of Cain there, so we know that he knew about it. And he refers to another curse, and that would be 70 times the curse of Cain, or 70 times 7. That would be 490 years. So now there are 2 curses working here, and it appears that whoever takes vengeance on the bloodline of Cain, they would fall under the curse, and that would be some kind of bondage. That could be spiritual bondage or actual physical slavery, and it would seem to fall on any of the descendants of whoever took vengeance on Cain or Lamech and their descendants. So there's this struggle of authority here. Whoever is seeking vengeance is basically seeking authority, and God had shown that he actually has the authority. So someone seeking vengeance is trying to take authority, and the wicked would do that. And it seems that the curse is actually something that's being transferred from Cain's bloodline to anybody else that would take vengeance on them. So it's putting Cain's bloodline in a type of authority or protection. They're not actually protected from death, but there's a curse that's coming into play that's keeping alive the wicked bloodline in some way. And you can also tell that the bloodline of Cain are clearly cursed from farming. And this is how you can identify who the descendants of Cain are. They couldn't farm. The Bible tells us that Cain was a vagabond, a fugitive. He was cut off from the earth. The earth wouldn't yield its produce to him. And it tells us his descendants worked in metals, with herds. They were artists, but they couldn't farm. And so it seems that the curse on Cain's descendants involved being cut off from the land in some way. They could still receive the wealth underground, the minerals, precious metals, oil, something like that. And they could also receive wealth on the surface like timber and stone, but they couldn't farm. And also anyone that took vengeance on Cain's descendants would fall into that curse. And this is what the Jubilee was. The Jubilee was land redemption. You would receive the ownership of your land back. And the curse would be this loss of land ownership, and it involved this struggle for authority. So if you took vengeance, you were basically trying to take authority, and God had said that he had the authority. So what was happening was they were forgetting God's authority, and they were seeking their own justice and taking their own revenge, and they'd fall under these curses on either Lamech or Cain, and there'd be these cycles of 49 years or 490 years where they would be losing their ability to farm, they'd be cut off from the land, they'd lose land ownership, and to make a living they had to turn to what Cain's descendants had done, and that would be herding, artistry, metalworking, even war. But the problem there was that Cain's people were already sophisticated in those things, they were ahead, so they'd take the dominance. Now the problem for Cain's people was they still needed some farming, they needed a remnant of farmers to provide them food, so there'd be trade, intermarriages, and contracts between the two people. But the Bible tells us there was increasing violence, so we know that there was bloodshed, war, there was probably famine resulting, pestilence, disease, the herds were probably overgrazing, they were probably decimating the forest to support armies, the farms were being affected, there was disease, and this all just increased up until the time of the flood and Noah. Now, there are some people that say that the curses that I'm referring to on Cain and Lamech ended with Noah, and that Noah and his family took the authority back, and God placed his authority back on Noah. But I say that the curses continued because Noah lost his authority. That's what the story about the vineyard and Noah's nakedness and the sin of Ham was all about. So I say that the curses continued, that through Ham, Cain's descendants took back the authority, or at least took back some of the dominance. There was still a struggle, a continuing struggle between the two people. And since Cain's people were more sophisticated than others, they had certainly mastered witchcraft and were sophisticated in all the arts, even the black arts. And so they were the ones that were probably calling on fallen angels for assistance, and this is where the intermarriage with fallen angels even came in. So this struggle was continuing, and the Bible even refers to it or hints at it in other passages. The 490 years is referred to by Daniel also, or by the angel that was teaching Daniel. There's a period of 77s, and Jesus himself also refers to what appears to be a 490-year period. When Peter asks him about forgiveness, how long should I keep forgiving a man that's sinning against me? And he says 7 times, and Jesus says 70 times 7. So that seems to hint at that same thing. Now it's interesting that if you look through history, you can see ages of about 500 years where there's some great event and some big change. There's some kind of deliverance, there's some new period, some new age starting. You can see there seemed to be something that happened with Lamech, the descendant of Cain. He was the 7th generation from Cain, and Enoch was the 7th generation from Seth, his ancestor. And it appears that Enoch was delivered from the bloodshed, from the war, by being translated. He was allowed not to have to endure it. He could escape it. And it seems that Lamech must have been killed, and these ages came into effect. And it looks like there were 3 ages of about 500 years or 490 years each up to the time of Noah. And with Noah there was a great deliverance. Now after Noah, it seems that Nimrod and the whole Babel affair was another 490 years approximately from the time of the flood and Noah. And Nimrod may have been killed, the Tower of Babel was stopped, the building was stopped, but then Babylon seems to rise again, and you see the rise of the Hittites, the Amorites, powers like that. But then Abraham came along, and he subdued some of the Amorites, and he also subdued the king of Elam and brought deliverance there. But then you see that Abraham had killed the king of Elam, which it seems like he wasn't supposed to do. The king of Elam seems like he had some of the bloodline of Cain, and the curse was involved with him because as soon as Abraham had killed the king of Elam, he had a nightmare, and he was shown that his descendants would be in Egypt in bondage for over 400 years. So that seems close to that 490-year curse. Then after this period of bondage, they had deliverance with Moses and Joshua. They went into the Promised Land, but then they had struggles with the Midianites, the Amalekites. They couldn't completely subdue the Canaanites and the Amorites. And the judges would deliver them, but they would fall into idolatry, and the struggle just continued until deliverance with David and Saul. So they had a time of peace after that, but they still couldn't quite subdue their enemies, and the kingdom fell apart. And then you had the destruction of the temple, and this was about 490 years from the time of David and Saul. Then you had the exile to Babylon, and Daniel was told soon after that there would be another 490 years until the time of the Messiah. And the Messiah would deliver them, but then he would be rejected, and the oppression under Rome would continue for about another 490 years until the fall of Rome. But then after the fall of Rome and that deliverance, you'd have the Dark Ages, and they would last roughly another 490 years. And then you'd have a deliverance through the Renaissance, a rebirth. But then you'd have Inquisition creep in, more struggle, leading to the Black Death. You'd have wars. And then there'd be another deliverance with the printing press, with the Protestant Reformation, the discovery of America. And you'd have deliverance, freedom from oppression, going to the New World. But then you had more wars, you had genocide, slavery, increasing struggle, and it's been about another 500 years since then. So what's the next big event?